All right, man, peace. So the NBA has made some alterations to its All-Star Game selection format. They've decided that the leading vote getter from each conference is going to choose his respective team. Of course, it has caused a little bit of controversy, in addition to the fact that the sports media is upset that the selection process is not going to be made public. Of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
We have some news about next month's All-Star Game. The NBA has just released the latest results from the fan vote. Steph Curry has passed KD to become the lead vote getter from the West, and as expected, LeBron James moved to the top spot in the East.
And I expect it to stay that way. I expect these two to be the leading vote getters in their respective conferences, and for them to be their respective captains as well. There may be a point where KD could pass Steph, especially if Steph stays out due to injury because of this latest ankle issue that he has. But I expect the leading vote getters for each conference to be LeBron for the East and Steph Curry for the West.
And of course, who leads each conference, particularly important this year because of the new All-Star format. Remember, instead of East versus West, the lead vote getter from each conference will be named team captain. And then the captains will draft their teams from the available pool playground style, which sounds amazing because let's face it, a huge part of the NBA's popularity is all the personal dynamics we've got going on in this league. And the idea of getting to see those actually play out in real time between the league's biggest stars, it's just incredibly juicy.
Let me say this. As you can see, she's displaying her normal Agent of Chaos alter. But I will say this. I do believe that it's good for the league if they were to decide to make this selection process public. Not so much to foster any type of narratives about who doesn't like who, but just to bring some of that competitive fervor back into the NBA All-Star Game. And I grew up in a time where the NBA All-Star Game was by far the best All-Star Game of any of the major sports. You could guarantee that down the stretch of an NBA All-Star Game in the fourth quarter, they were going to play like it was a playoff game. They showed the 1987 All-Star Game on NBA TV about a week ago, and they played that game, the latter part of the fourth quarter, into overtime like it was Game 7 of the conference finals or the finals. I mean, guys was going at it hard. And to be quite frank with you, the NBA All-Star Game has been terrible since I believe it was the 2012 All-Star Game. I think that was the last really competitive All-Star Game that I watched. That was the one where LeBron James got a shot blocked by Kobe, and they were shit talking him because he was passing in clutch situations and stuff like that. When when Carmelo and Kobe took him aside right after the game, like, what are you doing? The NBA All-Star Game has been terrible since then. Too many threes, too many guys trying to avoid contact, no defense, no one trying to go to the basket. And I believe that the lack of mid-range and post play in the NBA has taken away from a lot of the physical aspect of the All-Star Game that made it such a great game throughout the late 80s into the 90s, into the early and mid 2000s even. Because you had some of the best All-Star games even in the early 2000s. That 2001 All-Star Game, that classic, which I've mentioned before, where Allen Iverson and Kobe and Vince Carter came up big, Ray Allen. I believe that game was in D.C. because there's a classic photo of Allen Iverson right after the game in the tunnel getting a big hug from Michael Jordan. That was the season before Jordan came back to play with the Wizards. That was a classic All-Star game, but the All-Star games recently have been terrible.
Does Steph pick KD, but then purposely not pick Russ? Would LeBron pick Kyrie, force them to be teammates again? I would tell you that I can't wait to see it all, except I'm not going to get to see it, and neither are you. Any of it. Because the draft will not be televised. In fact, it won't even be announced. The whole thing is going to be done in secret. If two guys end up on the same team, you won't know if that was done on purpose or if it's just who was left at the time. Basically, the end result will feel as if the captains drew their teams out of a hat. And how come? Well, apparently, there are concerns that some players will get their feelings hurt. In fact, Carmelo Anthony said the draft should be even kept secret from the players themselves. Otherwise, quote, guys are going to be mad, guys are going to be upset, friendships come into play. Whereas
now you see how overly emotional a lot of these guys are now. You're going to be that hurt over an all-star selection? All these guys play with each other in the offseason during the summertime. So what's the process of picking teams in your summertime scrimmages? Was you just all put your name in a hat and pick them out so nobody gets their feelings hurt? Give me a fucking break.
Adam Silver put it on NBA TV yesterday, quote, "Yeah, it would be more fun to televise the draft, but there was a sense from players it would put them in an impossible position because," he said, "they'd be picking in part based on personal relationships."
In other words, they no longer have the ability to make decisions. I wonder why that is. I wonder why that is that these grown men no longer have the ability to make tough decisions or hard decisions and to not take things personal in a multi-billion-dollar sport. If your friendship with another player, quote unquote friendship, is so tenuous that it can be fractured by you not picking him in for an all-star game, an exhibition, that means that you guys were never friends in the first place.
Yes, that's exactly the point. That is what made it interesting in the first place. If you didn't want to lean into that, then you shouldn't have picked this as the method of spicing up the All-Star game.
I agree.
And look, some players do get it. LeBron is in favor of televising the draft.
Well, I'm sure he is. I'm sure that LeBron James is in favor of televising the All-Star game selection because he assumes that he's going to be the leading vote getter, as do I. That will put him in the position to be the master manipulator that he would love to be. Is LeBron going to choose Kyrie? See, LeBron would take this opportunity to try to instigate some psychological warfare against Kyrie and KD and whoever else he can, to try to show that he's still in charge, quote unquote. No, LeBron, his first pick would be Kyrie, just so that he can get Kyrie back in the locker room with him and see if he can pick his brain and try to leave him with some form of a message or a subliminal order that he hopes can filter its way into the Celtic locker room and destroy their chances of possibly competing with Cleveland. That's what LeBron's mind is at, I'm pretty sure.
He says, quote, "We are all grown men." John Wall agrees with him. And oh, by the way, if you want to know just what this would look and feel like, here you go. The NHL has tried its All-Star game this exact way, and they televised the draft.
The NHL just looking for any type of way to get notoriety in America.
Afterward, even the players who had been nervous about it going in, they gave it rave reviews. There were jokes, guys publicly lobbying their own teammates, even a mid-draft trade. And the league very smartly took the sting out of being picked last by giving that person a car,
That's a cool idea.
Which led to much hilarity as Alexander Ovechkin kept holding up a sign begging to be the final pick. So here is what I have to say to the NBA. It's not too late. All-Star is still 5 weeks away. We here at The Jump are begging you, televise the draft. Don't fight against a big part of what makes this league so appealing.
That's what they should do. You know what? They should have the all-star selection in regards to the team. They should have the two captains make that selection on the NBA Saturday. Maybe like right in the middle of or right before the skills competition or something like that. That would certainly bring some added spice, some added, a new dynamic to All-Star Saturday.
You were smart to adopt something fun. And right now, feels like you are blowing it. Tracy, you are a 7-time All-Star. You have played in this game. What would you say to players who think, it'll make people too uncomfortable to televise the draft?
Well, the All-Star game is supposed to be pure and unadulterated fun. I mean, these guys are taking it way too serious.
I disagree. I actually think that they're not taking it seriously enough. I think that they have not taken the All-Star game seriously enough. I think that they're taking the selection process way too seriously, which shows that they're more concerned about their rapport and relationship with guys across the league than they are with their own individual success as a team. Believe me, this would not have been a problem 25 years ago. Guys would have had no problem picking teams.
My question is, or rather statement.
Or hell, even 15 years ago, 16 years ago, because Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and those guys, they were as fierce of competitors as anybody from the 80s. That generation doesn't get as much credit as they deserve for being fierce competitors.
Statement is, all of y'all wasn't the first pick in the NBA draft. like in the regular draft, some of you guys might be second-round picks in the NBA draft. So, and some of you guys were sitting in the green room while other guys were getting drafted. You were just sitting there.
That's true, Tracy. But you know what? That kind of makes the point of many of these players who are fearful of some type of backlash from other players. Because let's be for real, many of the players who were passed over in the early part of the draft, what do we always hear from them? Oh, I used that to galvanize me. I can still name all the guys who were picked before me. Isn't that what Draymond Green says? You have people like Steph Curry, who I believe was drafted like 8th. And, he feels like he should have been drafted number 1. And, these guys are hyper competitive. So I would not make the point that they should not be worried about where they're picked in the All-Star draft because they were not picked first in the NBA draft. Because where guys were picked in the NBA draft is something that still motivates many of these players to this day. They'll still take out certain things on players to this day and teams to this day who they feel like were picked ahead of them who should not have been. So I think that kind of makes the reverse point. Michael Jordan, he kind of held it against the Portland Trail Blazers that they did not pick him. They picked Sam Bowie ahead of him every time that he went against them. He never had an issue with the Rockets because he holds Hakeem Olajuwon in such high esteem, and Hakeem was, he definitely was the number 1 pick in the draft, and he deserved to be. At that time period, it was still viewed that the center was who you started with. And in my view, Hakeem Olajuwon is the greatest center that I ever saw. He was not the most productive, quote unquote. He wasn't the most dominant. He didn't have the most unstoppable shot. But, pound for pound, skill for skill, he was the best center that I ever saw. That's why he's in my top 10 all time. Now, he would be higher up on the list had he been able to achieve more. But pound for pound, inch for inch, he was the best that I ever saw at that position.
What is the difference? Why are you guys so sensitive? Have fun with it. Enjoy it, man. Show it. This is what it's all about. It's about that drama and that excitement. It's fun. Stop taking it too serious.
Yeah, I think you should give the fans and the players, such as LeBron, what they want. I commend Adam Silver for being innovative and changing the format of the draft, but this spices it up a little more. Players, it's an honor to make the All-Star game. So, being picked first on somebody's team or last should never matter.
No.
You're in the game. So I think it'll bring more excitement to it. Like, dang, he actually picked Curry.
Right.
He actually picked LeBron. This is Durant. This is what the people want to see. I know I want to see it. It'll be good for marketing for the NBA, like you said. You can see how the NHL does it. Put some sponsors behind it. Create a big buzz around it. It'll be great.
Yeah, I think that it would be a good idea for the league. I think that Adam Silver, he needs to let his nuts drop and speak to Chris Paul and LeBron and Steph and KD and James Harden and those guys and find a way to make that work. Because I don't think that the selections for the All-Star game should be anonymous. It's not like you're voting for the Hall of Fame, which I also don't think should be anonymous, by the way. But I think that it would be a good idea for the league to bring back some competitive fervor for that game. Make it a little bit more ardent in regards to who wants to win the game. Because the NBA All-Star game has become much more of an exhibition. It's become too much of an exhibition. It looks more like a game between the Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals than two teams who are trying to win. Like, you couldn't go to the basket back in the 80s. You couldn't just go to the basket and guys just move straight out the way back then, unless it was maybe like the first 2 or 3 minutes of the first quarter. Guys might let you do that back then. Now it's a minute left in the fourth quarter, and the East is down by 1, and they're letting somebody just go right down the lane and dunk. Like, come on.
It's great drama for the NBA, and it's not like this format is going to change the game. It's not going to change the game. Monetary reason is not changing the game.
So Adam Silver has said, and he just gave a press conference about this in the last 20 minutes, and someone asked him again, and he pointed out, hey, our point was to improve the game. We didn't really even think about televising the draft. But if even the players don't know who drafted them, why, or when, or they just know, like, oh, maybe I was first, maybe I was last, how are they going to have that incentive, quote unquote, to make the game better that's supposed to be the whole point of this in the first place? Like, I don't get it.
Nothing is really going to change.
It's no different than the fans picking the player.
Right.
You don't know what number you got picked by that captain.
And if they had to pick you, if they wanted to pick you.
Yeah, so you might as well just bring it back to having a fair
creates nothing, really. This
Right?
is creating nothing.
And would you be, if you, I mean, you saw Alexander Ovechkin, pick me last. How would you feel if you were sitting there and you were the last pick?
If I was getting the car,
And then say like LeBron or KD or Giannis are the captains, one of them, and they picked all their boys in the NBA. Who cares? Everybody's an all-star.
I agree. You know, if they want to play that lunch table game, I'm going to pick all my guys that sit at my lunch table. Let them play that game. At the end of the day, I don't think that anyone is going to do that, because I think that when you get to when you get that captaincy, you want to win the game. At least that's what's in the forefront of your mind. So I would expect whoever gets the first pick to pick Kevin Durant. That's assuming that he's not one of the captains. If Kevin Durant's one of the captains, I would expect his first pick to be Steph Curry. I would be surprised if LeBron picks Steph first, but then again, who knows? He might do that just to play a little mind game. That's why I would be interested to see the selection process.
Right.
Everybody's an
some of
all-star.
these guys, if we go to the blacktop right now, I won't pick them first. And that's 100.
Right? And you'd want to know that. And that's the other thing. The other argument against televising it has been, hey, if guys just are picking their friends, it won't make the most balanced teams.
Man, get
Why
out of
not? Everybody's a great player in the game.
Right, and East and West wasn't
Cut it
making the
out.
most balanced teams. The idea is not to have balanced teams. That's not why the
here. Like I
All-Star
said,
game hasn't
you
been
were
good.
sitting in that green room
Right?
for a lot of picks, and you wasn't first, you wasn't second. What's the difference now?
All right, so tell today's players. There's still 5 weeks left. What do you think?
Televise it, Adam. Let's do it. This is what the people want.
Right?
Yeah, Adam Silver needs to man up. If that was David Stern, he would have won it. He would have walked in the room and said, "Look, this is what we're doing. LeBron, Steph, well, I expect one of you two guys to each be the captains or lead the All-Star voting for your respective conferences. This is what we're going to do." Adam Silver walking. Oh, guys, I just wanted to check the pulse of Player Association, say what you might like, what you prefer. Okay, no problem. Like, come on, man up.
Bring the drummer.
There we go. I want to get to last night's action.
But anyway, this should be a very, very interesting issue, because this female here, Rachel Nichols, she has decided to make this a major platform. I agree with her sentiment. I just don't agree with her motivation behind it. Of course, she's an agent of chaos. That's neither here nor there. But I do think that it would be good for the NBA to try to bring back some competition, man, in the All-Star game. You know? Have it to where guys actually want to win. But anyway, peace.